It all started with the very thing I thought would bring me peace: buying a home where I could finally breathe without constant interference. My cabin sat on a quiet street, just outside the boundary of the homeowners association. That was intentional. I'd heard the horror stories: neighbors fined for lawn height, letters slipped into mailboxes over mailbox colors, even a family forced to repaint their home 3 times in 1 year just to satisfy the whims of a committee that called itself Protectors of Community Standards. I wanted no part of it. But trouble, as I would learn, doesn't always respect property lines. The HOA president, a woman I'll call Karen because the name fits too well, had developed a fixation with my cabin. From the moment I moved in, she made her presence known. She'd walk by slowly, staring through the fence, pausing to jot notes into a little leather-bound book. Sometimes she'd take photos with her phone, pretending she was just capturing the landscape. Other times, she'd stand across the street and glare at my driveway as though my truck had committed some crime by existing. At first, I brushed it off. Neighbors can be nosy. That's just life. But then came the letters. White envelopes with official-looking HOA logos began appearing in my mailbox. The first one accused me of violating community parking standards. The second claimed my roof color was not within the approved palette. Another insisted I owed $375 in association fees, even though my home wasn't even under their jurisdiction. I laughed the first time. "Good luck collecting," I muttered, tossing the letter into the trash. But the laughter didn't last long. Each letter became more aggressive than the last. The HOA claimed they had authority over my property because, according to them, my cabin fell within the extended boundary of their association. That was a flat-out lie. I decided to ignore them. That's when Karen changed tactics. One evening, I came home from work and noticed something that sent a chill crawling up my spine. The lock on my front door had fresh scratches around it, as if someone had been trying to pick it. My gut told me exactly who it was. The next day, I installed a small hidden camera inside my living room, angled perfectly toward the entryway. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my closest friend. It didn't take long before the footage confirmed my worst suspicion. At 2:14 p.m. on a Wednesday, when most people assumed I was at work, Karen strolled up to my door, looking around carefully like a burglar casing a house. Then, without hesitation, she pulled a shiny silver key out of her purse. My heart dropped. She had a key. I don't know how she got it. Maybe the previous owner gave her one. Maybe she had contacts at the hardware store, maybe she was just bold enough to have one made. But the sight of her sliding that key into my lock boiled my blood. She turned the knob. The door creaked open. Karen stepped inside like she owned the place. She didn't knock, didn't call out, just crossed the threshold with her head high, as though she had every right. But what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed, was that she had just walked into a trap I had been setting for weeks. Because by then, I'd had enough. I'd gone to the police with the footage of her trying to intimidate me. They knew her reputation. Turns out, I wasn't the first person she'd harassed. So when I told them she might try to enter my home illegally, they were more than willing to help me set up a sting. That's why, on the day Karen slid her stolen key into my lock and pushed my door open with self-satisfied arrogance, she didn't find an empty living room. She found 2 uniformed officers sitting calmly on my couch, waiting for her. The look on her face when she froze in that doorway, that was just the beginning of the story. Karen's hand lingered on the doorknob, as if her brain couldn't process what her eyes were telling her. For a few heartbeats, she stood motionless, framed in the doorway, pupils darting from one officer to the other. The officers didn't leap up, didn't shout. They didn't need to. Their calmness was more intimidating than any yelling could have been. One of them said, his voice steady but firm, "You want to explain why you're entering this home without permission?" Karen blinked rapidly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She finally let out a brittle laugh, the kind of laugh people use when they are caught doing something indefensible, but think they can still talk their way out of it. "Oh, officers," she began, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This house is under our homeowners association. I'm on the board, so technically, I have authority to do an inspection." The taller officer raised an eyebrow. "Inspection? Without the owner's knowledge? Without a warrant?" Her smile faltered. "Well, it's different with HOAs. You wouldn't understand. He's in violation of several rules, and I needed to." "Stop," the second officer cut in, his tone sharp. "We already verified this property is outside of your HOA jurisdiction. You have no authority here. And breaking and entering, that's a crime." Karen's shoulders stiffened. She shifted her weight nervously, still trying to cling to her self-importance. "I didn't break anything. I have a key. You see. If I have a key, it can't be illegal." She dangled the silver key between her fingers like it was proof of innocence instead of guilt. That was the moment I stepped out from the hallway where I'd been watching. Karen's face drained of color. "You," she hissed, pointing at me as though I were the one trespassing in my own home. "You set me up." "Set you up?" I shot back, my voice low but edged with the months of frustration she'd caused me. "No, Karen. I protected myself. You've been harassing me since the day I moved in. You've sent letters, threatened fines, and now, you unlocked my door like you owned this place. You crossed the line." The taller officer stood, adjusting his belt. Do you have proof that you're authorized to enter this residence?" Karen faltered, her lips twitching as she searched for a comeback. "Well, the board, the community standards." "Proof," he repeated flatly. Her silence was damning. Place the key on the table." Karen hesitated, her knuckles whitening around the metal. For a moment, it looked like she might actually bolt, but then, with a trembling hand, she set the key down. The officer picked it up, bagged it, and noted the evidence. I folded my arms, keeping my eyes on her. "You didn't just cross the line, Karen. You stomped over it and trampled every bit of privacy I have. That's not oversight. That's obsession." She snapped her head toward me, her expression twisting into something ugly. "You think you're clever? You're just another outsider trying to destroy our neighborhood. You don't belong here. People like me, people who care about rules, we're the ones who keep communities safe. By breaking into homes." I shot back. "That's your idea of safety." Her mouth opened, but before she could spew another excuse, the officer placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's enough. You're coming with us for questioning." The moment the officer's hand touched her, her entire demeanor flipped. She went from arrogant and self-righteous to panicked. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I know the mayor. I'll sue all of you." She jerked her arm away, her voice rising in a shrill pitch. "Do you know who I am?" The shorter officer sighed. "Yeah. We know exactly who you are. That's why we're here." Her face twisted, red blotches spreading across her cheeks. For the first time since I met her, I saw something besides arrogance in her eyes, fear. And yet, even then, she couldn't stop herself. "This man, he's manipulating you. He's dangerous. He's trying to ruin everything we've built. If you let him stay here, the whole neighborhood will fall apart. Just look at that truck in his driveway, it's an eyesore." The officer looked at me, then back at her. "Lady, we don't care about trucks. We care about crimes. And right now, the only person committing them is you." Her breath hitched. Her eyes darted wildly as though looking for an escape. But there was no escape. Not this time. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, letting the scene sink in. For months, Karen had tried to intimidate me with letters, threats, and smug stares. Now, she was the one cornered, her authority stripped away, her lies exposed. And yet, I knew this wasn't over. Not with someone like her. People like Karen don't go down quietly. They fight, claw, and drag everyone else through the mud before admitting defeat. But the difference now? She wasn't fighting me alone anymore. The law had stepped in. And that changed everything. The squad car pulled away from my driveway with Karen in the backseat, still shouting threats through the half-open window. Even as the tail lights disappeared down the street, her words lingered in the air like a bitter taste. "You'll regret this. Everyone will side with me. This isn't over." I stood on the porch, arms crossed, the tension in my chest loosening for the first time in months. The officers assured me they'd keep me updated, that her key would be logged as evidence, and that charges were likely. But as I shut my door and sat in the silence of my living room, I realized something important. Karen's downfall wouldn't just happen in a police interrogation room. It would happen in front of the very people she claimed to represent. The neighborhood buzz. By the next morning, whispers spread like wildfire. My phone buzzed with texts from neighbors I barely knew. Some were curious. Others sounded nervous. A few were almost gleeful, as though they'd been waiting years for someone to finally put the HOA president in her place. "Is it true she broke into your house?" one text asked. "I saw the police take her away last night." "What happened?" another demanded. For a while, I didn't respond. Let them wonder. Let the truth simmer until Karen's carefully crafted image cracked under its own weight. By noon, the HOA board called an emergency meeting in the clubhouse down the street. Even though I technically wasn't part of their association, I was invited, probably because my name was already on everyone's lips. I decided to go. The clubhouse showdown. The room buzzed with tension when I walked in. Dozens of homeowners sat in folding chairs, their faces a mix of concern, curiosity, and anger. At the front of the room sat the board, minus Karen, of course. The vice president, a nervous man with thinning hair, cleared his throat into the microphone. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. As you may have heard, our president, Mrs. Harrington. Karen, someone muttered from the back. The room chuckled. The VP flushed. Yes, Mrs. Harrington was involved in an incident last night. We are still gathering facts, but it appears she entered a private residence without permission. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others nodded knowingly as if it confirmed long-held suspicions. I raised my hand. That private residence was mine. Every head turned. The room went silent. I stood, my voice steady but carrying the weight of months of harassment. Since the day I moved in, Karen has stalked my property. She sent fraudulent letters, claimed I owed fees I never signed up for, and even accused me of breaking rules that don't apply to my home. Yesterday, she crossed the line, literally, by unlocking my door with a key she had no right to possess. The police caught her inside my living room. Gasps erupted. A few people shook their heads, others exchanged wide-eyed looks. The VP stammered, "Well, there must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps she..." "No misunderstanding," I cut in. "The police have video proof. She's being investigated for trespassing and attempted burglary." That's your president. The silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was realization. One by one, homeowners began whispering about their own experiences. She fined me for having a bird feeder, one woman said bitterly. She threatened to sue me over my garden gnomes, another added. She told me she had the right to inspect my garage anytime she wanted, an older man muttered. It was like a dam had burst. Years of frustration poured out, story after story, each one exposing the iron grip Karen had held over the neighborhood. For the first time, people weren't afraid to speak. At the station. Meanwhile, Karen sat in a cramped interrogation room, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against the metal table. The officer across from her dropped a folder of evidence with a heavy thud. Inside were printed screenshots from my camera footage, copies of the fake violation letters, and a report confirming my property wasn't under HOA control. Mrs. Harrington, the officer began, you're facing some serious charges. Do you want to explain how you got a key to a house that doesn't belong to you? Karen scoffed. It's not what it looks like. I was protecting the community. That man, he doesn't follow the rules. He's dangerous. Dangerous, the officer echoed. For mowing his lawn differently than you like. For owning a truck you don't approve of. You don't understand, she snapped, leaning forward. If people don't follow standards, neighborhoods collapse. Values plummet. I've seen it happen. I was preventing chaos. The officer sighed, scribbling notes. So you admit you entered without the owner's consent? Her eyes widened. She backpedaled immediately. No, I had consent. The association bylaws. Stop right there, the officer said, his tone sharp. We checked. His property is not part of your HOA. You had no legal right. And possession of a key without the owner's knowledge. That's evidence of premeditation. For the first time, Karen's composure cracked. She shifted uncomfortably, her bravado shrinking into nervous muttering. I was just trying to help. But her words carried no weight anymore. Cracks in the throne. Back in the neighborhood, the board reluctantly announced that Karen was being suspended pending investigation. The room erupted in applause. Some people hugged. Others laughed in relief. For so long, Karen had been the self-appointed queen of the HOA, ruling with fines and threats. Now, her throne was crumbling beneath her. But I knew Karen well enough to understand one thing, she wasn't done. Not yet. Because people like her don't accept defeat. They scheme. They retaliate. They look for new angles to regain control. And I had the sinking feeling that the worst was still to come. The courthouse was packed the morning of Karen's arraignment. I hadn't planned to attend at first, but curiosity, and a desire for closure, pulled me there. After months of harassment, after seeing her walk into my home with stolen authority, I needed to see her stripped of the power she'd abused for so long. The gallery buzzed with hushed conversations. Many of the people who once trembled under her HOA rule now sat in the benches, their arms crossed, waiting for justice. Some looked nervous, unsure if Karen might somehow wriggle out of it. Others, like me, carried the calm satisfaction of knowing her empire had already started to crumble. Then the doors opened. Karen walked in, flanked by her attorney. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, her once perfect hair flat, her face pale. But her eyes, those cold, piercing eyes, still carried that flicker of arrogance, as though she believed she could talk her way out of this. The bailiff called the room to order. Case number 42719, The People vs. Karen Harrington. The charges rolled out: criminal trespass, attempted burglary, harassment, unlawful possession of a key. Each word was a hammer striking against the fragile tower she had built around herself. When asked for her plea, she stood tall. Not guilty. The courtroom stirred. The testimony. The prosecution wasted no time. They presented the footage from my hidden camera, Karen inserting the key, opening my door, stepping into my living room like she belonged there. The video froze on her shocked face the moment she saw the officers waiting. The jurors leaned forward. Even those who hadn't lived under her rule could read the arrogance in her stance. Next came the letters. Stacks of them, fraudulent violation notices, demands for payment, threats of liens that held no legal ground. Each document was another nail in the coffin. Then it was my turn to testify. I rose, walked to the witness stand, and swore in. My voice was steady, though inside, my heart hammered. I told the story from the beginning, the first stairs across the street, the bogus letters, the intimidation, the scratches on my lock, and finally, the moment I saw her slide that stolen key into my door. The defense attorney tried to twist my words, painting me as paranoid, claiming Karen was simply protecting the community. But the jury didn't buy it. Their eyes told me they saw her for what she was, a bully drunk on power. Karen's last stand. When it came time for Karen to speak, she didn't hold back. I did what any responsible leader would do, she declared, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. That man was a threat to our neighborhood. He refused to follow rules. He mocked our standards. If I hadn't intervened, property values would have plummeted. I was defending everyone here. She pointed toward the gallery, her finger shaking. You all know it's true. Without me, this community will fall apart. Do you really want to live in chaos? Do you want trucks on lawns, weeds in gardens, and outsiders lowering everything you've worked for? Her voice cracked, desperation spilling into every syllable. But instead of cheers or support, the room fell into cold silence. Not one neighbor came to her defense. Even the board members she once commanded sat stone-faced, unwilling to meet her eyes. For the first time, Karen stood alone. The verdict. The trial was shorter than anyone expected. The evidence was overwhelming, the testimonies damning. The jury returned with their decision, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to probation, mandatory community service, and a hefty fine. More importantly, she was banned from holding any position of authority in the HOA, or any other association, ever again. Karen's face twisted in disbelief as the gavel came down. Her kingdom was gone. Her title, her power, her illusion of control, all stripped away. She turned once, locking eyes with me as the bailiff guided her out. Her glare still carried venom, but it was hollow now. Empty. The queen had fallen. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood transformed. The board voted in new leadership, this time choosing people who actually cared about the community instead of controlling it. The absurd fines stopped. The letters stopped. For the first time in years, people planted gardens, painted their homes, and parked their trucks without fear. As for me, I finally felt peace in my own cabin. No more notes in the mailbox, no more shadows watching from across the street. Sometimes, though, I catch myself glancing toward the road, half expecting Karen to reappear, her rage undimmed, plotting a return. People like her rarely disappear quietly. But then I remind myself of that frozen moment in my doorway, the instant her arrogance shattered, when she saw the police waiting. That was the day the spell broke. The day the tyrant lost her crown. And if she ever tries again, she'll find that this time, the whole community is ready. Not just me.